Sarah Martinez had never held a gun in her life. At 28, she worked as a librarian in downtown Phoenix, spending her days organizing books and helping students with research. Her world consisted of quiet reading rooms, coffee shops, and weekend hiking trips with her golden retriever, Max. The closest she had come to violence was watching action movies with her boyfriend, Derek, who constantly bragged about his military training and shooting skills. Derek had been pestering Sarah for months to join him at the Desert Eagle shooting range. Every weekend, he would come home with stories about his perfect groupings and how he had impressed other shooters with his marksmanship. Sarah always politely declined, explaining that guns made her nervous and she preferred her weekend activities to be peaceful. But Derek was persistent, often making comments about how she needed to learn to protect herself and how shooting was an essential life skill. "Come on, Sarah," Derek would say while cleaning his collection of handguns at their kitchen table. "You can't live in fear forever. What if someone breaks into the house when I'm not here? What if you're walking alone and someone tries to attack you?" His arguments always carried a tone of condescension, as if Sarah was foolish for not sharing his enthusiasm for firearms. The pressure finally reached a breaking point on a sunny Saturday morning in March. Derek's friends from his old Army unit were visiting Phoenix, and they had planned a group outing to the shooting range. Mike, a stocky man with a thick Boston accent, and Tommy, a lanky guy from Texas who never stopped talking about his gun collection, had been ribbing Derek about his city girl girlfriend who was too scared to shoot. "I bet she'd faint just from the sound of a gunshot," Mike laughed, slapping Derek on the back. "You need to toughen her up, man. What kind of soldier's girlfriend is afraid of guns?" Sarah overheard this conversation from the kitchen where she was making coffee. The comment stung, not because she cared what Derek's friends thought, but because she could hear Derek laughing along instead of defending her. She walked into the living room, her jaw set with determination. "Fine," she announced, surprising everyone. "I'll come with you today. But I'm not doing this to prove anything to anyone. I'm doing it because I'm curious about what all the fuss is about." Derek's face lit up with excitement. "Really? That's fantastic. You're going to love it, Sarah. I'll teach you everything you need to know. We'll start with the basics: proper stance, breathing techniques, sight alignment. By the end of the day, you'll be hitting bullseyes like a pro." Mike and Tommy exchanged glances and smirked. "This should be entertaining," Tommy muttered under his breath. An hour later, they arrived at the Desert Eagle shooting range, a sprawling facility on the outskirts of Phoenix. The building was larger than Sarah had expected, with a pro shop filled with guns, ammunition, and tactical gear. The walls were decorated with targets showing perfect groupings and photos of local shooting competitions. The sound of gunfire echoed from the indoor ranges, making Sarah's heart race with each pop and bang. Derek immediately began showing off his knowledge to his friends and the range staff. He spoke confidently about different calibers, grain weights, and shooting techniques. Sarah followed quietly behind the group, taking in the serious atmosphere of the place. Everyone here seemed to know exactly what they were doing, handling firearms with practiced ease and casual confidence. "All right, Sarah," Derek said, leading her to lane 15. "We're going to start you off with my Glock 19. It's a 9mm, perfect for beginners. Light recoil, easy to control, very forgiving." He held up the black pistol, checking to make sure it was unloaded before handing it to her. The gun felt heavier than Sarah had expected. The metal was cold against her palms, and she could feel the textured grip through her sweaty hands. Derek positioned himself behind her, placing his hands over hers to demonstrate the proper grip. 2 hands, firm but not death grip. Index finger along the frame until you're ready to shoot, never on the trigger. Always treat every gun as if it's loaded, even when you know it's not. Never point the muzzle at anything you don't want to destroy. Sarah nodded, trying to absorb all the information. The basic safety rules made sense, but actually holding the weapon made everything feel very real and serious. This wasn't a movie or a video game. This was a tool designed specifically to put holes in things, and she was about to use it. Mike and Tommy had set up in the lanes on either side of them, and Sarah could hear them loading their magazines with practiced efficiency. The metallic clicking sounds of ammunition being pressed into place added to her nervousness. These men had done this thousands of times, and she was about to embarrass herself in front of them. "Remember, Sarah," Derek continued, "shooting is 90% mental. You need to control your breathing, relax your muscles, and follow through on every shot. Don't jerk the trigger, squeeze it straight back smoothly. And whatever you do, don't close your eyes when you fire. Range Officer Jackson Williams had been working at Desert Eagle for 15 years. At 52, he had seen every type of shooter imaginable walk through those doors. Military veterans, police officers, competitive shooters, first-time gun owners, nervous beginners, and overconfident amateurs. He had developed an almost supernatural ability to assess someone's skill level and potential just by watching them handle a firearm for the first few seconds. From his position behind the firing line, Jackson observed the group in lanes 13, 14, and 15. The two military guys looked competent enough, though they carried themselves with the kind of swagger that often led to careless mistakes. The boyfriend was clearly trying to impress everyone, talking too much and handling his gun with unnecessary flourishes. But it was the young woman in lane 15 that caught Jackson's attention. Sarah was listening intently to every instruction, asking clarifying questions, and treating the firearm with appropriate respect and caution. She wasn't trying to show off or prove anything. She was genuinely focused on learning and doing things correctly. Jackson had learned that this type of student often surprised everyone, including themselves. Derek clipped a standard bullseye target to the motorized carrier and sent it down range to the 7-yard line. "We'll start close," he explained to Sarah. "Once you get comfortable with the basics, we can move it back to 15 or 25 yards. Sarah loaded the magazine with Derek's help, chambered around, and took her shooting stance. The eye protection felt bulky and awkward, and the ear protection made everything sound muffled and distant. Through her safety glasses, the target looked both very close and impossibly far away. "Remember what we practiced," Derek said. "Front sight focus, equal light gaps on either side, squeeze straight back." Sarah lined up the sights as Derek had shown her, took a deep breath, and slowly pressed the trigger. The gun fired with a loud bang that startled her despite the ear protection. The recoil was sharper than she had expected, pushing the gun up and back in her hands. "Where did I hit?" she asked, trying to see the target. Derek was already looking through his binoculars. I don't see a hole. You might have missed the target completely. That's totally normal for a first shot. Let's try again, but this time really focus on the front sight." Mike and Tommy were watching with barely concealed amusement. Tommy fired a quick 5-shot group into the center of his target, then turned to watch Sarah's second attempt. Sarah's second shot also appeared to miss the target entirely. So did her third, fourth, and fifth. By the time she had fired the entire magazine, there were no visible holes anywhere on her target paper. Derek was looking embarrassed, and his friends were starting to make jokes. "Maybe you should move the target closer," Mike suggested with a grin. "Like, really close. Maybe 3 yards. Or get a bigger target," Tommy added. "They make some that are like 4 feet wide for beginners." Derek forced a laugh. "Don't worry, honey. Everyone misses when they're starting out. It's totally normal. Let's reload and try again. This time, really concentrate on keeping the gun steady." Sarah could feel her cheeks burning with embarrassment. She had expected to struggle, but she hadn't expected to miss the entire target completely. The paper was 4 feet tall and 3 feet wide, with a bright orange bullseye in the center. How was it even possible to miss something that large from only 7 yards away? Jackson Williams had been watching the entire exchange with growing interest. Something wasn't adding up. The woman's stance was actually quite good for a beginner. Her grip looked solid, her breathing appeared controlled, and she was taking her time with each shot instead of rushing. Most importantly, she wasn't flinching or jerking the trigger, two of the most common problems with new shooters. But the target showed no hits at all. That was unusual, even for someone who had never shot before. Jackson had seen thousands of first-time shooters, and while they rarely hit the bullseye, they almost always at least hit the paper somewhere. Complete misses were uncommon unless someone was doing something fundamentally wrong. Jackson walked over to lane 15 during the next ceasefire. "How's it going over here?" Derek looked up with a sheepish expression. "Not great, officer. My girlfriend is having trouble hitting the target. I'm trying to help her with the basics, but she's missing completely. Any suggestions?" Jackson looked at Sarah, who was reloading her magazine with careful attention to what she was doing. "Ma'am, how are you feeling about the gun? Is the recoil bothering you? Are you having trouble seeing the sights?" Sarah looked up gratefully. "The recoil is manageable. The sights seem clear enough. I just can't figure out where my shots are going. I thought I was aiming at the center of the target, but apparently not. Mind if I watch you fire a few rounds?" Jackson asked. "Please," Sarah replied. "Any help would be appreciated." Jackson positioned himself slightly behind and to the side where he could observe Sarah's shooting technique. She loaded the gun, took her stance, lined up the sights, and fired. Her form looked good. No obvious problems with stance, grip, sight alignment, or trigger control. But, again, no hole appeared in the target. That looked like a good shot, Jackson said thoughtfully. Let me check something. He walked over to the target and examined it closely with his flashlight, looking for any sign of bullet impact. Nothing. Then, he walked to the targets on either side of lane 15 and checked them as well. Mike's target showed a tight group in the center ring. Tommy's target had several holes scattered around the bullseye area, but no extra holes that might indicate Sarah's errant rounds. Jackson frowned and walked back to the firing line. This was genuinely puzzling. Where were Sarah's bullets going? Let's try something, Jackson said. I want you to fire one more shot, but this time I'm going to watch very carefully to see if I can spot where the bullet is going. Sarah nodded and prepared to fire again. Jackson positioned himself where he could observe both Sarah and the entire length of the range. She lined up her shot, controlled her breathing, and squeezed the trigger smoothly. Jackson watched the muzzle flash and then immediately scanned the range for any sign of impact. Nothing on the target. Nothing on the target stance. Nothing on the side walls. Then, almost as an afterthought, he glanced up at the ceiling tiles directly above the target area. There, in the acoustic tile about 3 feet above and slightly behind the target, was a small, neat hole. Jackson blinked and looked again. Yes, there was definitely a fresh bullet hole in the ceiling, almost perfectly aligned with lane 15. He moved his gaze and spotted 4 more holes in the ceiling tiles, all in a tight group. Well, I'll be damned, Jackson muttered under his breath. Derek and his friends were still discussing Sarah's apparent inability to hit anything, completely unaware of Jackson's discovery. Sarah was looking dejected, convinced that she was hopeless as a marksman. Let me see that gun for a second, Jackson said to Derek. Derek handed over his Glock 19, and Jackson examined the sights carefully. Everything looked normal. He checked the barrel alignment, the sight picture, and the general condition of the firearm. Nothing seemed wrong with the gun itself. Jackson was beginning to form a theory, but it was so unusual that he wanted to verify it before saying anything. In 15 years of range supervision, he had never encountered anything quite like this. Sarah, he said, I want to try something different. Instead of aiming at the center of the target, I want you to aim at the bottom edge of the paper. Just pretend there's a target down there, and aim for the center of that imaginary target. Sarah looked confused but nodded. Should I move the target closer? No, leave it at 7 yards. Just aim lower than you have been. Derek and his friends watched with puzzled expressions as Sarah took her stance and aimed at what appeared to be empty space below the target. This seemed like terrible advice, but Jackson was the range officer, so they stayed quiet. Sarah lined up her shot, aiming at the bottom edge of the target paper, and fired. This time, a hole appeared in the target. Not in the center ring, but about halfway between the center and the bottom edge. Still not a great shot by most standards, but it was definitely on paper. Interesting, Jackson said with a slight smile. Try it again, but this time aim even lower. Aim at the stand that's holding the target. Sarah fired again, and this shot hit closer to the center ring. One more time, Jackson instructed. Aim at the floor just in front of the target stand. Sarah's third shot struck the bullseye. Derek, Mike, and Tommy stared in amazement. Tommy was the first to speak. What the hell just happened? How did aiming at the floor put the bullet in the bullseye? Jackson was grinning now, clearly enjoying the moment. Gentlemen, your girlfriend here has been shooting a perfect group this entire time. The problem is, her perfect group was about 3 feet above the target. He pointed up at the ceiling tiles. Take a look up there. Everyone craned their necks to look where Jackson was pointing. The 5 small holes in the ceiling were clearly visible, clustered in an area roughly the size of a softball. That, Jackson announced, is some of the most consistent shooting I've seen from a first-time shooter in 15 years. Derek's mouth fell open. Mike and Tommy looked confused and slightly embarrassed. Sarah just stared up at the ceiling in amazement. But how is that possible? Derek asked. I checked the sights on that gun just last week. Everything was zeroed properly. Jackson was studying the Glock more carefully now. The gun is fine. The sights are properly aligned. But Sarah isn't shooting the same way you are. Derek, show me your shooting stance. Derek demonstrated his preferred shooting stance, a modified Weaver position with his strong side foot back and his body angled to the target. His head was tilted slightly to align his dominant eye with the sights. Now, Sarah, show me how you were shooting. Sarah replicated her shooting position. At first glance, it looked similar to Derek's stance, but Jackson noticed some subtle differences. Sarah's head position was different, and her eye alignment was creating a different sight picture than what Derek had taught her. There's the problem, Jackson explained. Sarah, you're left eye dominant, aren't you? Sarah nodded. Yes, I'm left-handed. But Derek taught you to shoot right-handed because that's how he shoots. When you line up the sights, you're unconsciously using your dominant left eye, which creates a different sight picture than what the gun is set up for. You're actually shooting very accurately, just not where the sights are telling you to shoot. Jackson pulled out a small eye dominance test card. Let's verify this. Hold your hands out, and make a small triangle with your fingers. Look at me through the triangle with both eyes open. Sarah followed the instructions. Jackson moved side to side and confirmed that she was indeed strongly left-eye dominant. The solution is simple, Jackson continued. Either you learn to shoot left-handed, or we adjust your technique to account for your eye dominance while shooting right-handed. Derek looked stunned. Are you telling me she was actually shooting accurately this whole time? More than accurately, Jackson replied. That group in the ceiling would be impressive from an experienced shooter. For someone who's never fired a gun before, it's remarkable. She has excellent natural stability and trigger control. Sarah was still processing this information. So I'm not a terrible shot? Ma'am, you're the opposite of a terrible shot. Once we get your sights aligned properly with your dominant eye, I think you're going to surprise everyone here. Mike and Tommy, who had been making jokes about Sarah's shooting all morning, suddenly looked very uncomfortable. Their casual mockery had been based on completely wrong assumptions. Jackson spent the next few minutes adjusting Sarah's stance and sight alignment to account for her left eye dominance while shooting right-handed. He showed her how to tilt her head slightly and position herself to get a proper sight picture. Now try the target again, Jackson instructed. This time, aim for the center of the bullseye. Sarah took her adjusted stance, lined up the sights with her corrected technique, and fired. The bullet struck the bullseye near the center. Again, Jackson said. The second shot hit even closer to the center. The third shot was almost touching the center ring. By the fifth shot, Sarah had put together a group that Derek would have been proud to claim as his own. The transformation was remarkable. In the span of 10 minutes, Sarah had gone from appearing to be completely hopeless to shooting better than Derek's friends, who had years of experience. Derek was experiencing a mixture of pride and embarrassment. He was proud of his girlfriend's unexpected skill, but embarrassed that he had failed to recognize the eye dominance issue. His military training should have made him aware of this basic shooting fundamental. I can't believe I missed that, Derek muttered. Eye dominance is like shooting 101. I should have tested for that first thing. Don't feel bad, Jackson said diplomatically. It happens more often than you'd think. Most people assume that handedness and eye dominance are the same thing, but they're independent. About 30% of right-handed people are left-eye dominant. Tommy, who had been the most vocal in his mockery earlier, was looking at Sarah's target with grudging respect. That's actually really good shooting. I mean, for anyone, not just a beginner. Mike nodded in agreement. I hate to admit it, but that group is better than what I shot this morning. Sarah was feeling a complex mixture of emotions. Relief that she wasn't actually hopeless, pride in her unexpected ability, and some lingering irritation at how quick everyone had been to assume she was incompetent. She was also beginning to understand why Derek enjoyed this sport. There was something satisfying about the precision and control required for accurate shooting. Can I try a more challenging target? Sarah asked Jackson. Absolutely. How about we move it back to 15 yards and see how you do? Jackson sent Sarah's target back to the 15-yard line, roughly doubling the distance. At this range, the bullseye appeared much smaller, and any errors in technique would be magnified. Sarah took her corrected stance, focused on her sight alignment, and fired her first shot at the longer distance. The bullet struck the outer ring of the bullseye, a respectable shot for the distance and her experience level. Excellent, Jackson commented. Remember, at this distance, everything needs to be more precise. Sight alignment, trigger control, follow through. Sarah's subsequent shots gradually tightened into the center of the target. By the end of the magazine, she had achieved what most people would consider an excellent group for any shooter, let alone someone on their first day. Derek was watching with a mixture of amazement and something that might have been concern. His girlfriend, who had been reluctant to even touch a gun that morning, was displaying a natural aptitude that exceeded his own abilities. This wasn't how he had imagined the day would go. You know, Jackson said to Sarah, we have a beginners shooting league that meets here on Tuesday evenings. Based on what I've seen today, you might want to consider joining. We're always looking for new members, especially people with natural talent. Sarah was surprised by the suggestion. When she had agreed to come to the range that morning, she had assumed it would be a one-time experience to satisfy Derek and his friends. She hadn't expected to enjoy it, and she certainly hadn't expected to be any good at it. But she found herself genuinely interested in Jackson's offer. There was something appealing about the precision and mental discipline required for good shooting. It was like a physical form of meditation, requiring complete focus and control. What does the league involve? Sarah asked. Mostly it's about learning proper techniques and safety procedures. We work on fundamentals, try different types of shooting, and occasionally have friendly competitions. Nothing too serious, just people who want to improve their skills and have fun doing it. Derek cleared his throat. Sarah, you don't have to decide right now. This is just your first time shooting. Maybe you should get more experience before joining any leagues. Sarah detected a note of something in Derek's voice. Not quite discouragement, but not enthusiasm either. She wondered if he was uncomfortable with the possibility that she might become more involved in his hobby than he had anticipated. I think it sounds interesting, Sarah replied. I'd like to know more about it. Jackson handed her a flyer with information about the league meeting times and contact details. No commitment required. You can just drop by next Tuesday and see what it's about. We're a friendly group, and we love helping new shooters develop their skills. As they prepared to leave the range, Sarah reflected on how dramatically her expectations for the day had been overturned. She had started the morning reluctant and nervous, convinced that she would embarrass herself in front of Derek's friends. Instead, she had discovered an unexpected talent and a potential new interest. The drive home was quieter than the drive to the range had been. Derek was clearly processing what he had witnessed, and Mike and Tommy seemed subdued compared to their earlier boisterous confidence. That was really impressive, Sarah, Mike finally said from the back seat. I owe you an apology for the comments I made earlier. That was uncool. Tommy nodded in agreement. Yeah, same here. That was some serious shooting. Where did that come from? Sarah appreciated the apologies, though she noted that they had come only after her ability had been demonstrated. She wondered if these men would have been so quick to make their jokes if they had known she would turn out to be a better shot than they were. I honestly have no idea, Sarah replied. I've never done anything like this before. I don't even particularly like action movies. Sometimes people just have natural hand-eye coordination and steady nerves, Derek said, though his tone suggested he was still processing the implications. When they arrived home, Derek immediately began cleaning his guns while Sarah made sandwiches for lunch. The familiar domestic routine felt different somehow, colored by the morning's unexpected discoveries. As Sarah watched Derek methodically field strip and clean his Glock, she found herself paying attention to the process in a way she never had before. Previously, his gun maintenance had been something that happened around her, an activity she tolerated but didn't engage with. Now she was curious about the mechanics and the procedure. Can you teach me how to clean it? Sarah asked. Derek looked up in surprise. Really? You want to learn gun maintenance too? If I'm going to be shooting, I should probably know how to take care of the equipment properly. Derek's expression was complicated. Part pleased, part uncertain. Of course, basic maintenance is important for safety and performance. Every gun owner should know how to clean their firearms. As Derek walked Sarah through the cleaning process, she realized that her entire relationship with this aspect of Derek's life was changing. What had previously been his exclusive domain was becoming something they might share. She wasn't sure how Derek felt about that, and she was still figuring out how she felt about it herself. The phone rang, interrupting the cleaning lesson. It was Derek's friend Charlie, calling to hear about their range trip. How did it go? Charlie asked. Did Sarah survive her first shooting experience? Derek glanced at Sarah, who was listening to the conversation while carefully following his instructions for cleaning the gun barrel. Actually, Derek said, she did better than survive. She turned out to be a natural. Really? That's great. I told you she'd probably enjoy it once she tried it. No, Charlie, you don't understand. She wasn't just okay. She was actually better than Mike and Tommy. Better than me, if I'm being honest. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Are you serious? Dead serious. The range officer said she has some of the best natural shooting ability he's seen in 15 years. He invited her to join their shooting league. Sarah could hear Charlie's surprised laughter through the phone. Wow, that's not what I expected. How do you feel about that? It was a good question, and Derek didn't have a ready answer. I'm not sure yet, he admitted. Proud, I guess. Surprised, definitely. Maybe a little intimidated. Sarah appreciated Derek's honesty, both with Charlie and with himself. Many men might have felt threatened by their girlfriend's unexpected superiority in what they considered their area of expertise. Derek was handling it better than she might have expected, though she could tell he was still working through his feelings about the situation. After Derek finished his phone conversation, they completed the gun cleaning together. Sarah found the process oddly satisfying. There was something meditative about the careful attention to detail and the methodical approach to maintenance. Derek, Sarah said as they put away the cleaning supplies, I want you to know that I'm not trying to take over your hobby or show you up or anything like that. Derek looked at her with a slight smile. I know. And, honestly, I'm proud of you. It's pretty cool having a girlfriend who can outshoot most of the guys at the range. I just need to adjust my ego a little bit. We could make it something we do together, Sarah suggested. If you're okay with that. I'd like that, Derek replied. And Sarah could tell he meant it. As they settled in for a quiet Sunday afternoon, Sarah found herself thinking about Jackson's invitation to the Tuesday night league meeting. She was genuinely interested, but she also wanted to make sure Derek was comfortable with her pursuing this new interest. About that shooting league, Sarah said. Would you be interested in coming with me to check it out? Derek's face brightened. Actually, yes. I've heard good things about their program. And I could probably learn a few things myself. Sarah smiled. Maybe this unexpected development would strengthen their relationship rather than complicate it. They would be exploring something new together, as equals rather than as teacher and student. Looking back on the morning's events, Sarah marveled at how wrong everyone's assumptions had been. Derek had assumed she would struggle and need extensive coaching. His friends had assumed she would be helpless and provide entertainment through her incompetence. She had assumed she would be terrible and embarrass herself. Instead, she had discovered a hidden talent and potentially a new passion. More importantly, she had learned something about not accepting other people's limitations on what she might be capable of achieving. The missed shots that had initially seemed like failure had actually been proof of remarkable consistency and accuracy, just misplaced due to a technical issue that was easily corrected. Sometimes what looks like failure is actually success that's been misdirected. As Sarah sat on the couch with Derek, planning their week and discussing the upcoming league meeting, she felt a sense of anticipation that she hadn't expected. Tuesday evening couldn't come soon enough. Tuesday evening arrived with an unusual mixture of excitement and nervousness for Sarah. She had spent the past 2 days thinking about her unexpected performance at the shooting range, replaying the moment when Jackson had pointed to the ceiling and revealed her hidden accuracy. The memory still seemed surreal, like something that had happened to someone else entirely. Derek had been supportive, but subdued since Saturday's revelation. Sarah noticed him watching her with a curious expression when he thought she wasn't looking, as if he was trying to figure out who this person was that he had been dating for 2 years. She understood his confusion because she was feeling the same way about herself. The Desert Eagle shooting range looked different on Tuesday evening. The parking lot was less crowded, and the atmosphere inside seemed more relaxed and social. Sarah could hear laughter and conversation coming from the classroom area where the league meeting was taking place. Through the doorway, she could see a diverse group of people ranging from teenagers to senior citizens, all gathered around tables with coffee and donuts. You nervous? Derek asked as they approached the classroom. A little, Sarah admitted. I still can't quite believe what happened on Saturday. What if it was just beginner's luck? What if I can't do it again? Jackson seemed pretty confident that you have real ability, Derek replied. And, honestly, even if Saturday was a fluke, you've got nothing to lose by checking this out. Jackson Williams spotted them from across the room and waved them over. He was talking with a group of league members, and Sarah could see him gesturing in her direction. Several people turned to look at them with curious interest. Sarah, Derek, glad you could make it, Jackson said warmly. Everyone, I'd like you to meet Sarah Martinez. She's the shooter I was telling you about. An older woman with silver hair and bright blue eyes extended her hand to Sarah. I'm Margaret Chun, but everyone calls me Maggie. Jackson has been talking about you all week. Says you've got natural talent like he's never seen. He's probably exaggerating, Sarah replied, shaking Maggie's firm handshake. I only shot for about an hour on Saturday. Sometimes an hour is all it takes to recognize something special, said a tall man with a graying beard who introduced himself as Dr. Robert Patterson. I've been shooting competitively for 30 years, and I can usually tell within the first few shots whether someone has the fundamentals for excellence. Derek was listening to this conversation with a mixture of pride and bewilderment. These people were talking about Sarah as if she was a prodigy, based on a single morning at the range. He was starting to realize that what he had witnessed on Saturday might have been even more unusual than he had initially understood. Jackson called the meeting to order and began with introductions for the benefit of the new visitors. Sarah learned that the Tuesday Night League had been meeting for over 8 years and included people from all walks of life. There were police officers, teachers, retirees, college students, and business professionals. What they shared was a passion for precision shooting and a commitment to safety and continuous improvement. We're not a competitive league in the formal sense, Jackson explained. We don't keep official scores or have rankings. This is about personal improvement, learning new skills, and supporting each other. Some of our members go on to compete in formal matches, but that's not required or expected. Maggie Chen raised her hand. Jackson, why don't you tell our new visitors about the different activities we do throughout the year? Good idea. We rotate through different types of shooting throughout the season. Basic bullseye shooting, practical pistol drills, precision rifle work when we have access to the outdoor range, and even some historical shooting with period firearms. We also have guest instructors who come in to teach specialized techniques. Dr. Patterson added, next month we're having a session on competitive shooting fundamentals with Maria Santos, who just qualified for the national championship team. The month after that, we have a police instructor coming in to teach defensive shooting techniques. Sarah found herself genuinely intrigued by the variety of activities and learning opportunities. This wasn't just about shooting targets. It was about developing a comprehensive understanding of marksmanship as both a skill and a discipline. How often do you meet? Derek asked. Every Tuesday evening from 6 to 8:30, Jackson replied. We spend about 30 minutes here in the classroom covering theory, technique, or safety topics. Then, we head to the range for practical work. Everyone works at their own pace and level. A younger man who looked to be in his early 20s spoke up. I started coming here about a year ago as a complete beginner. I couldn't hit a target the size of a dinner plate from 10 feet away. These people have been incredibly patient and helpful. Now I'm shooting in local competitions and actually placing pretty well. This testimonial resonated with Sarah. She appreciated the supportive, non-judgmental atmosphere that seemed to characterize the group. There was no showing off or ego-driven competition, just people helping each other improve. Would you like to join us for tonight's range session? Jackson asked. No pressure, just an opportunity to see what we do and maybe work on your technique a little more. Sarah looked at Derek, who nodded encouragingly. I'd like that, she said. The group moved from the classroom to the range, where Jackson had set up a variety of different shooting exercises. Some members were working on basic bullseye shooting, others were practicing rapid-fire drills, and a few were working with different types of firearms than Sarah had used before. Maggie Chen approached Sarah with a knowing smile. Jackson told us about your little adventure with the ceiling tiles. He said it was one of the most impressive displays of consistent accuracy he's ever seen, even if it was misdirected. Sarah felt her cheeks warm with embarrassment. I still can't believe I was shooting so far off target without realizing it. Don't be embarrassed, Maggie replied. Eye dominance issues are incredibly common, and most instructors don't test for it properly. The impressive part is that you were shooting a consistent group under those conditions. That shows excellent fundamental technique and natural stability. Dr. Patterson overheard their conversation and joined them. Sarah, what Maggie is trying to tell you is that accuracy can be taught, but consistency is largely natural. Some people can learn to hit a bullseye occasionally, but very few people can put shot after shot in the same place without extensive training. The fact that you did that on your first day suggests you have some real natural ability. Jackson approached with a target and some ammunition. Sarah, I'd like to try something with you tonight, if you're willing. I want to see how you do with some different shooting challenges, just to get a better sense of your capabilities. What kind of challenges? Sarah asked. Nothing too demanding. Maybe some shooting at different distances, try some timed exercises, see how you do with a smaller target. All stuff that will help you develop your skills regardless. Sarah agreed, and Jackson set up a series of progressively more challenging exercises. He started with standard bullseye shooting at 15 yards, then moved the target back to 25 yards, then introduced a smaller target at the same distance. With each challenge, Sarah's performance remained remarkably consistent. Her groups were tight and centered, her stance was stable, and her trigger control was smooth and predictable. The league members who were watching began to take notice. That's really exceptional shooting, Dr. Patterson commented after Sarah completed a 10-shot group at 25 yards that could have been covered by a silver dollar. Sarah, how are you feeling about the gun? Are you comfortable with the weight and balance? It feels good, Sarah replied. Actually, it's starting to feel quite natural in my hands. Jackson nodded approvingly. That's important. Some people never develop that comfortable relationship with a firearm, but you seem to have a natural feel for it. Derek was watching Sarah's performance with increasing amazement. He had been shooting for years and considered himself competent, but Sarah's groups were consistently better than anything he had achieved. More importantly, she was making it look effortless. "Derek," Maggie said, approaching him with a sympathetic expression, "how are you handling all this? It must be a bit overwhelming to discover your girlfriend has this kind of talent." Derek considered the question seriously. "It's definitely not what I expected. When I invited Sarah to come shooting, I thought I'd be teaching her the basics, and maybe she'd develop enough interest to join me occasionally. I didn't expect her to be better at it than I am." "Are you bothered by that?" Maggie asked. "Honestly, a little, maybe, but mostly I'm proud of her. And I'm realizing that I might learn as much from watching her as she learns from the instruction here." Maggie smiled. "That's a mature perspective. Some men would feel threatened. But good shooting isn't about gender or experience. It's about fundamentals and natural ability. Sarah clearly has both." Jackson called Sarah over for the next exercise. "I want to try something a little different. We're going to work on timed shooting. Nothing too fast-paced. Just see how you handle a little bit of time pressure." He set up a timer for 60 seconds and gave Sarah 10 rounds. "Take your time, but try to get all 10 shots fired before the timer goes off. Don't rush, just work at a steady pace." Sarah loaded her magazine and waited for Jackson's signal to begin. When he started the timer, she settled into her shooting stance and began firing at a measured pace. She took enough time to line up each shot properly, but didn't dawdle between shots. When the timer sounded, she had fired all 10 rounds with about 5 seconds to spare. The target showed another impressive group, with all 10 shots clustered in the center ring of the bullseye. More remarkably, the group was no larger than her previous group's shot without time pressure. "Excellent," Jackson said, examining the target. "A lot of shooters fall apart when you introduce any kind of time constraint, but your accuracy didn't deteriorate at all. That suggests you're not overthinking your shots or getting caught up in perfectionism." Dr. Patterson was studying the target as well. "Sarah, have you ever done any other activities that require this kind of hand-eye coordination and precision? Sports, music, crafts, anything like that?" Sarah thought about the question. "I play piano, and I've been doing that since I was a child. I also do a fair amount of detailed work in my job at the library, cataloging and organizing materials. But nothing that seems directly related to shooting." "Piano is actually very relevant," Dr. Patterson explained. "The finger dexterity, the precision, the ability to perform the same motion consistently over and over again. Those are all skills that transfer to shooting. And detail-oriented work develops the kind of patience and focus that good shooting requires." Maggie nodded in agreement. "Plus, piano teaches you to perform under pressure. When you're playing a piece, you have to execute every note correctly in sequence. There's no going back and fixing mistakes. That's very similar to shooting, where every shot has to be executed properly in the moment." Sarah was fascinated by these connections. She had never thought of shooting in terms of the other skills she had developed, but the parallels made sense. Both piano and shooting required precise motor control, mental focus, and the ability to repeat complex actions consistently. Jackson approached with a different pistol. "Sarah, would you like to try shooting with a different gun? This is a .22 caliber target pistol. It's specifically designed for precision shooting, and it might feel different from the 9mm you've been using." The .22 caliber pistol was noticeably different from Derek's Glock. It was heavier, with a longer barrel and more precise sights. The grip felt different in Sarah's hands, and the overall balance was shifted toward the front of the gun. "Take a few practice shots to get used to the feel," Jackson suggested. "The recoil will be much lighter, and the trigger is probably more sensitive than what you're used to." Sarah fired a couple of shots to familiarize herself with the new gun, then settled in for a 10-shot group. The lighter recoil was indeed noticeable, and she found that she could maintain her sight picture more easily between shots. When she finished the string of shots, Jackson brought the target back for examination. The group was even tighter than her previous groups, clustered in an area smaller than a quarter in the center of the bullseye. "Outstanding," Dr. Patterson said, clearly impressed. "That's competitive-level shooting right there. Sarah, you might want to consider getting involved in formal target shooting competitions." "I don't know anything about competitions," Sarah replied. "What would that involve?" Maggie explained that there were local, regional, and national shooting competitions for different skill levels and categories. Beginning competitors could start with local matches that emphasized fundamentals and personal improvement rather than cutthroat competition. "The key is to compete against yourself first," Maggie said. Set personal goals for accuracy and consistency, and use the competition environment to challenge yourself to perform under pressure. The social aspect is great too. You meet people from all over who share your interest in precision shooting. Derek had been listening to this conversation with growing realization that Sarah was being drawn into a world he had only observed from the outside. He enjoyed shooting recreationally, but these people were talking about a level of involvement and commitment that he had never considered. Sarah, Derek said, this is all really exciting, but maybe you should take some time to think about how much you want to get involved. This could turn into a pretty serious hobby. Sarah looked at Derek with an expression he couldn't quite read. Would that bother you if I got more serious about shooting? It was a fair question, and Derek realized he didn't have a simple answer. No, I don't think so. I just want to make sure you're not getting carried away by all the positive attention. This is still very new for you. Jackson diplomatically stepped in. Derek makes a good point. Sarah, you've shown remarkable natural ability, but it's important to take things at your own pace. There's no pressure to dive into the deep end immediately. The Tuesday Night League is a great way to continue developing your skills while you figure out how much you want to pursue this. I'd like to keep coming to the Tuesday meetings, Sarah said. Beyond that, I don't know yet. But I do know I want to learn more and keep improving. The evening continued with various members working with Sarah on different aspects of shooting technique. She tried different shooting positions, learned about ammunition selection, and received instruction on advanced sight alignment techniques. Throughout it all, her performance remained consistently impressive. As the meeting wound down around 8:30, several league members approached Sarah to exchange contact information and invite her to other shooting-related activities. There was a women's shooting group that met monthly, a precision rifle club that shot at an outdoor range, and an informal group that got together for shooting competitions around the state. You don't have to say yes to everything, Maggie advised quietly. But it's good to know about the opportunities. When you're ready to take the next step, there are lots of ways to do it. On the drive home, Sarah and Derek discussed the evening's events. Sarah was energized by the new challenges and the supportive environment of the league. Derek was processing the realization that his girlfriend had discovered not just a talent, but potentially a passion that might become a significant part of her life. How do you feel about tonight? Derek asked. I loved it, Sarah replied honestly. Everyone was so welcoming and knowledgeable. I learned more in 2 hours than I thought possible. And the shooting itself, there's something really satisfying about the precision and control required. You seem like a natural, Derek said. Everyone was really impressed with your shooting. What about you? How did you feel watching all of that? Derek thought carefully before answering. Proud, amazed, maybe a little intimidated. These people are talking about you like you could be really good at this, like competition level good. That's not what I expected when I suggested you try shooting. Does that bother you? I don't think so. It's just different. I've always been the one with more shooting experience in our relationship. Now it looks like that's changing pretty rapidly. Sarah reached over and took Derek's hand. It doesn't have to change anything between us unless we let it. We could do this together, learn together. I'd like that, Derek said, squeezing her hand. I just need to adjust my expectations and maybe my ego a little bit. When they arrived home, Sarah found herself thinking about the various invitations and opportunities that had been presented to her that evening. The prospect of competitive shooting intrigued her, though she wasn't sure she was ready for that level of commitment yet. She was also thinking about the practical aspects of getting more involved in shooting sports. She would need her own equipment, proper training, and time to practice. It could become an expensive hobby, and it would definitely require more time than she had initially anticipated spending on Derek's weekend activity. Derek, Sarah said as they got ready for bed, if I decide to get more serious about shooting, it's going to mean some changes. I'll need to buy equipment, spend more time at the range, maybe travel to competitions. Are you okay with that? Honestly, I'm still figuring that out, Derek replied. But I think so. I've always supported your other interests, and this wouldn't be any different. Plus, it's something we can potentially do together. And you're not worried about me getting better than you? Derek laughed. I think that ship has already sailed. You're already better than me, and you've been shooting for exactly 3 days. I might as well get used to it. Sarah appreciated Derek's honesty and his effort to be supportive despite his own complicated feelings about the situation. She was beginning to understand that her unexpected talent was creating adjustments for both of them. As she lay in bed that night, Sarah reflected on how dramatically her life had changed in just a few days. She had gone from someone who was afraid of guns to someone who was being encouraged to consider competitive shooting. More importantly, she had discovered something about herself that she never would have imagined. The feeling of holding a pistol steady and placing shots exactly where she intended them was unlike anything else she had experienced. There was a meditative quality to the focus required, a satisfaction in the precision achieved, and a sense of mastery over a complex skill. She was beginning to understand why Derek and his friends found shooting so compelling. But she was also aware that this new interest was creating ripple effects in her relationship and her life. Derek was being supportive, but she could tell he was still processing what her newfound ability meant for their dynamic. His friends had made assumptions about her based on gender stereotypes, and now those assumptions had been dramatically overturned. Sarah was also thinking about the broader implications of becoming involved in shooting sports as a woman. She had observed that the league membership was predominantly male, though there were several accomplished female shooters like Maggie Chun. She wondered what challenges and opportunities she might encounter as she became more involved in this traditionally male-dominated activity. The invitation to join competitions was both exciting and intimidating. Sarah had always been somewhat competitive by nature, though she had never found an activity where her competitive instincts and her abilities aligned so clearly. The prospect of testing her skills against other shooters was appealing, but it also represented a level of commitment that would require careful consideration. As she drifted off to sleep, Sarah was already looking forward to the following Tuesday evening and the opportunity to continue learning and improving her shooting skills. She had no idea where this new path might lead, but she was eager to find out. The next morning, Derek was already up and getting ready for work when Sarah's phone rang. She was surprised to see Jackson Williams' name on the caller ID. "Good morning, Sarah. I hope I'm not calling too early." "Not at all. What's up?" "I wanted to follow up on last night's session. I've been thinking about your shooting, and I have a proposition for you if you're interested." Sarah sat up in bed, immediately alert. "What kind of proposition?" "There's a women's precision shooting clinic next Saturday at our outdoor range facility. It's run by Maria Santos, the competitive shooter I mentioned last night. She's looking for a few promising new shooters to work with, and I'd like to recommend you for the program." Sarah was intrigued, but hesitant. "What would that involve?" "It's a day-long intensive focusing on advanced shooting techniques, equipment selection, and competitive preparation. Maria works with shooters who are considering getting involved in formal competition. Based on what I saw last night, I think you could benefit tremendously from her instruction." "That sounds really interesting, but I should probably talk it over with Derek first." "Of course. But, Sarah, I want you to know that in 15 years of range supervision, I've seen thousands of shooters. What you demonstrated Saturday and last night is genuinely exceptional. If you're interested in pursuing this seriously, you have the natural ability to excel at a very high level." After hanging up, Sarah sat in bed thinking about Jackson's call and his recommendation. The opportunity to work with a national-level competitive shooter was obviously valuable, but it also represented another step toward a level of involvement she hadn't anticipated. Derek emerged from the shower and noticed Sarah's thoughtful expression. "Everything okay?" "Who was on the phone?" "Jackson Williams. He wants to recommend me for a women's shooting clinic next Saturday with that competitive shooter, Maria Santos." Derek paused in getting dressed. Wow. That's a pretty big opportunity, isn't it?" "I think so. But it's also getting pretty serious pretty fast. A week ago, I'd never held a gun, and now I'm being invited to train with national-level competitors." "How do you feel about it?" Sarah considered the question. "Excited, nervous, a little overwhelmed, and curious about how good I might actually be able to get." "Then, maybe you should do it," Derek said. "You can always decide later how far you want to take this. But turning down the opportunity to learn from someone at that level might be something you'd regret." Sarah looked at Derek with appreciation for his support, even though she could tell he was still working through his own feelings about her rapid progression in shooting sports. "You're right," she said. "I think I'll call Jackson back and tell him I'm interested." As Sarah reached for her phone to call Jackson back, she realized that she was making a decision that might change the trajectory of her life in ways she couldn't yet anticipate. But the prospect of discovering the full extent of her abilities was too compelling to resist. Saturday morning arrived with unseasonably cool weather for Phoenix, creating perfect conditions for outdoor shooting. Sarah had spent the week researching Maria Santos online and learning about competitive shooting sports, trying to prepare herself for what Jackson had described as an intensive training clinic. The more she learned, the more nervous and excited she became. Maria Santos was a 3-time national champion who had represented the United States in international competition. Her bio included victories at prestigious matches across the country, and Her shooting records were impressive even to someone as new to the sport as Sarah. The idea of receiving instruction from someone at that level was both thrilling and intimidating. Derek had offered to drive Sarah to the outdoor range facility, which was located about 45 minutes east of Phoenix in the desert foothills. The drive gave them time to talk about the rapid changes in Sarah's life since that first Saturday at the indoor range just 1 week earlier. "Are you nervous?" Derek asked as they navigated the winding desert roads leading to the facility. "Completely terrified," Sarah admitted. "I keep wondering if Jackson is overselling my ability, and I'm going to embarrass myself in front of a bunch of experienced shooters. From what I've seen, I don't think you have anything to worry about. Your shooting has been consistently excellent." "But this is different," Sarah replied. "These women will have years of experience and proper training. I've had exactly 1 week of instruction, and most of that was figuring out basic eye dominance issues." Derek reached over and squeezed her hand. "Just remember that everyone was a beginner once, and Jackson wouldn't have recommended you if he didn't think you belonged there." The outdoor range facility was more elaborate than Sarah had expected. In addition to multiple shooting ranges extending out into the desert, there were classrooms, equipment rooms, and a small pro shop. The setting was beautiful, with mountain views and desert landscape providing a dramatic backdrop for the shooting activities. Sarah could see a group of women gathered around several tables set up under a large pavilion. Most appeared to be in their 30s or 40s, and they were examining various types of firearms and equipment while engaged in animated conversation. The atmosphere seemed serious but friendly, focused but not intimidating. Maria Santos was immediately recognizable from her online photos, though in person she appeared smaller and more unassuming than Sarah had expected. She was a compact woman in her late 30s with short dark hair and intense brown eyes that seemed to take in everything around her with analytical precision. "You must be Sarah," Maria said, approaching with a firm handshake and a warm smile. "Jackson has told me quite a lot about you. He's very excited about your potential." "I'm honored to be here," Sarah replied. "Though I should mention that I only started shooting last weekend. I'm not sure I'm ready for advanced instruction." Maria laughed. "Jackson warned me you might say something like that. Trust me, if Jackson thinks you're ready for this clinic, you're ready. He's one of the best judges of raw shooting talent I've ever met." Maria introduced Sarah to the other participants, a diverse group of women ranging from relative beginners to accomplished competitive shooters. There was Jennifer, a police officer from Tucson who was working toward qualifying for her department's SWAT team. Lisa, a college student who had started shooting in high school and was considering trying out for her university's shooting team. Margaret, a retiree who had discovered competitive shooting later in life and was pursuing it with the dedication of someone making up for lost time. "What we're going to do today," Maria explained to the group, "is work through a progression of shooting fundamentals and see where everyone's skills currently stand. Then, we'll develop individualized training plans based on what we observe. Some of you are here to refine technique, others to learn new skills, and a few are exploring whether competitive shooting is something you want to pursue seriously." The morning began with what Maria called baseline assessment. Each participant would shoot several strings of fire at different distances and with different time constraints, allowing Maria to evaluate their current skill level and identify areas for improvement. Sarah was nervous as her turn approached. She had brought Derek's Glock 19, the same gun she had used for all her previous shooting, and she had spent time the previous evening practicing the stance and sight alignment techniques Jackson had taught her. "Sarah, you're up," Maria called. "Let's see what Jackson has been telling me about." Sarah approached the firing line with 25 rounds of ammunition and a target set at 25 yards. Maria had explained that she wanted to see 10 shots fired slowly for precision, 10 shots fired at a moderate pace, and 5 shots fired quickly to simulate time pressure. Taking her stance, Sarah focused on her breathing and sight alignment. The outdoor environment felt different from the indoor range where she had done all her previous shooting. The wind was light but noticeable, and the natural lighting created different sight pictures than the artificial lighting she was used to. Her first string of slow-fire shots felt good as she released them. She could see through her spotting scope that the shots were grouping well in the center of the target, though not quite as tightly as her indoor shooting had been. The outdoor conditions were adding variables she hadn't experienced before. The moderate pace string went similarly well, with Sarah maintaining good accuracy while increasing her rate of fire. The quick-fire string was more challenging, requiring her to trust her natural shooting instincts rather than consciously controlling every aspect of the shot process. Maria examined Sarah's target through binoculars, then walked downrange to retrieve it for closer inspection. When she returned, her expression was one of genuine surprise. Jackson wasn't exaggerating, Maria announced to the group. This is exceptional shooting for someone with 1 week of experience. Sarah, your slow-fire group would be competitive in most local matches, and your rapid-fire accuracy is better than many shooters achieve after months of training. Sarah felt a flush of pride mixed with continued disbelief. Really? It felt less precise than my indoor shooting. That's normal, Maria replied. Outdoor shooting introduces wind, varying light conditions, and different range distances. The fact that you adapted this well on your first attempt suggests excellent natural instincts. Jennifer, the police officer, examined Sarah's target and whistled appreciatively. I've been shooting for 5 years, and your groups are tighter than mine. That's impressive work. The other participants gathered around to look at Sarah's shooting results, and the comments were universally positive. Sarah was beginning to understand that her shooting ability might be even more unusual than she had realized. Sarah, Maria said, I'd like to work with you individually this afternoon on some advanced techniques. But first, let's see how you handle different shooting positions and challenges. The morning continued with exercises designed to test adaptability and fundamental skills. Sarah shot from standing, sitting, and prone positions. She worked with different types of targets and at various distances. Throughout it all, her performance remained consistently strong, adapting quickly to new challenges and maintaining accuracy across different scenarios. During the lunch break, Maria approached Sarah privately. Can we talk for a few minutes? They walked away from the group to a quiet area overlooking the desert. Maria's expression was serious, but encouraging. Sarah, I need to be direct with you about something. In 20 years of competitive shooting, I've seen a lot of talented people. What you're demonstrating here is not just talent. It's exceptional natural ability combined with excellent fundamentals. Jackson was right to get you here as quickly as possible. Sarah wasn't sure how to respond. I appreciate that, but I'm still trying to understand what this all means. A week ago, I had never held a gun. Here's what it means, Maria continued. With proper training and dedication, you could compete at the national level within 2 years. Maybe sooner. I've seen world-class shooters who didn't show this kind of natural consistency when they were starting out. The statement hit Sarah like a physical blow. National-level competition seemed impossibly far removed from her quiet life as a librarian. Are you serious? Completely serious. But I need you to understand what that would involve. Competitive shooting at the level I'm talking about requires significant time, financial investment, and dedication. It would change your life substantially. Sarah sat quietly for several minutes, processing this information. The idea of pursuing something at a national competitive level had never occurred to her in any area of her life. She had always been competent at things she tried, but never exceptional. What would it actually involve? Sarah asked. Training 3 to 4 times per week, travel to matches around the country, significant equipment investment, coaching fees, ammunition costs. It's expensive and time-consuming. But for someone with your natural ability, the opportunities are extraordinary. Maria explained that there were sponsorship opportunities for promising competitive shooters, college scholarships available through shooting sports programs, and even potential Olympic development pathways for the very best marksmen. I'm not saying you have to make any decisions today, Maria continued. But I want you to understand the potential so you can make informed choices about how far you want to pursue this. When they returned to the group for the afternoon session, Sarah's head was spinning with possibilities she had never imagined. The other participants noticed that she seemed distracted, but attributed it to concentration on the challenging afternoon exercises Maria had planned. The afternoon focused on advanced shooting techniques and competitive preparation. Maria introduced concepts like wind reading, ammunition tuning, equipment optimization, and mental preparation strategies. Sarah absorbed everything eagerly, finding that each new technique seemed to make intuitive sense to her. One thing that's interesting about your shooting, Maria observed while working individually with Sarah, is how quickly you adapt to new information. Most people need extensive practice to integrate new techniques into their shooting. You seem to pick things up almost immediately. Sarah was working on a drill that involved transitioning between different target distances quickly while maintaining accuracy. The exercise was designed to develop the kind of versatility required for certain types of competition. I think it's because I'm not fighting any bad habits, Sarah replied. Since I'm learning everything from scratch, I don't have to unlearn incorrect techniques first. That's part of it, Maria agreed. But there's something else going on. You have exceptional body awareness and motor control. Combined with your natural stability and focus, it creates ideal conditions for precision shooting. As the afternoon progressed, Maria introduced Sarah to more advanced equipment. She tried different types of pistols, various ammunition loads, and specialized competition accessories. With each change, Sarah's shooting remained consistently accurate, adapting quickly to the different characteristics of each setup. "This is remarkable," Lisa, the college student, commented after watching Sarah work through a series of challenging drills. "You make it look effortless." "It doesn't feel effortless," Sarah replied honestly. "But it does feel natural, I guess. Like the gun is doing what I want it to do." By late afternoon, Maria had seen enough to confirm her initial assessment. During a break in the training, she pulled Sarah aside again. "I want to make you an offer," Maria said. "I'd like to take you on as a student for serious competitive training. That would involve working together twice a week, developing a comprehensive training program, and preparing you for local and regional competitions." Sarah was stunned. "You're offering to coach me personally?" "Yes. I don't take on many students, and I've never offered to work with someone this new to the sport. But your natural ability is exceptional, and I believe you could achieve something really special with proper training." "What would that cost?" Maria smiled. "Nothing initially. I'm interested enough in your potential that I'd be willing to work with you for the first few months without charge, just to see how far we can develop your skills. If you decide to pursue competition seriously, we can discuss formal coaching arrangements then." Sarah felt overwhelmed by the magnitude of the offer. "I need to think about this and discuss it with Derek. This would be a major life change." "Of course. Take all the time you need. But, Sarah, opportunities like this don't come along very often. I hope you'll give it serious consideration." The clinic concluded with individual feedback sessions where Maria provided each participant with a written assessment and recommendations for continued development. Sarah's assessment was unlike anything Maria had ever written for a beginning shooter. "Exceptional natural ability," the assessment read. "Demonstrates advanced fundamentals despite minimal training. Shows remarkable adaptability and consistency across various shooting challenges. Strong candidate for competitive development. Recommend intensive training program and competition preparation." As Sarah and Derek drove home, Derek could tell that something significant had happened during the afternoon private sessions with Maria. "How did it go?" Derek asked. "You seem pretty quiet." Sarah took a deep breath. "Maria offered to coach me personally for competitive shooting. She thinks I could compete at the national level within 2 years." Derek nearly swerved off the road. "She said what?" Sarah repeated Maria's offer and her assessment of Sarah's potential. Derek listened in amazement as Sarah described the training commitment and lifestyle changes that serious competitive shooting would involve. "What did you tell her?" "That I need to think about it and discuss it with you." "Derek, this would change everything about our lives. The time commitment, the travel, the expense. It's not a decision I can make lightly." Derek was quiet for several minutes, processing the implications of what Sarah was telling him. When he finally spoke, his voice was carefully controlled. "What do you want to do?" "I don't know yet. A week ago, I didn't know anything about shooting. Now someone is offering to train me for national competition. It seems surreal. But how do you feel about it?" Derek pressed. "Forget about the practical considerations for a minute. What does your gut tell you?" Sarah considered the question honestly. "Excited, scared, intrigued. There's something about shooting that appeals to me in a way I've never experienced with any other activity. And the idea of seeing how good I could become is really compelling." "Then, maybe you should do it," Derek said quietly. Sarah looked at him in surprise. "Really? Even though it would affect both of our lives significantly?" "Sarah, in the 2 years we've been together, I've never seen you excited about anything the way you've been excited about shooting this past week. If you have a chance to pursue something you're not only good at, but passionate about, I think you should take it. What about us? What about our relationship?" Derek reached over and took her hand. "We'll figure it out. Good relationships adapt to allow both people to grow and pursue their dreams. If this is your dream, then we'll find a way to make it work." Sarah felt a rush of love and gratitude toward Derek. His support meant more to her than he probably realized, especially given how drastically her new interest was changing the dynamics of their relationship. "There's something else," Sarah said. "Maria mentioned that there are college scholarship opportunities through shooting sports, and even potential Olympic development programs for the very best shooters." Derek glanced at her with raised eyebrows. "Olympics? She thinks you could potentially make the Olympics." "She said it was a possibility, if I had the right training and dedication." "Derek, I don't even know how to process that kind of potential. One step at a time, Derek replied practically. You don't have to decide about the Olympics right now. You just have to decide whether you want to take Maria's offer for coaching. As they pulled into their driveway, Sarah realized that she was facing the biggest decision of her adult life. The opportunity Maria was offering represented a path she had never imagined, toward achievements she had never dreamed possible. But it also meant committing to a level of dedication and focus that would fundamentally change who she was and how she lived. That evening, Sarah called her parents to tell them about the day's events. Her mother, Elena, was shocked by the rapid development of Sarah's shooting abilities and the opportunities being presented to her. Mija, are you sure about this? Elena asked. Shooting sports seems so violent and dangerous. Sarah explained that competitive shooting was actually one of the safest sports in terms of injury rates, and that the violence her mother was imagining was more associated with hunting or military applications than with precision target shooting. It's more like gymnastics or figure skating than anything violent, Sarah said. It's about precision, control, and mental discipline. The fact that it involves firearms doesn't make it inherently dangerous when done properly. Her father, Carlos, was more supportive. If you have a natural talent for something, you should explore it. Life doesn't give you many opportunities to discover you're exceptional at something. Maybe you should see where this leads. That night, as Sarah lay in bed thinking about her conversation with Maria and the offer of professional coaching, she realized that she had already made her decision. The prospect of seeing how good she could become was too compelling to resist. She had discovered something she was not just good at, but potentially extraordinary at, and she couldn't walk away from that possibility. The next morning, she called Maria Santos. I'd like to accept your offer, Sarah said. When can we start? Maria's pleasure was evident in her voice. How about Tuesday evening? We can start with a comprehensive assessment of your current skills and develop a training plan from there. Sarah, I think you're making the right decision. I'm excited to work with you. After hanging up, Sarah found Derek in the kitchen making coffee. I called Maria, she announced. I'm going to do it. Derek turned to look at her, and Sarah could see pride and concern mixing in his expression. How do you feel? Scared? Excited? Like I'm about to jump off a cliff, and I'm not sure what's at the bottom. Well, Derek said, handing her a cup of coffee. Whatever happens, it's going to be an adventure. Sarah smiled, thinking about how dramatically her life had changed since that first reluctant trip to the shooting range just 1 week earlier. She had no idea where this new path would lead, but she was ready to find out.